Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing Superman Returns, which was the first modern take of the Man of Steel on the big screen after Christopher Reeves' suite of films. And incidentally, this film was actually set as the third film within the Superman Christopher Reeves kind of world. So I guess they're discounting the third and fourth one from existence. And I actually really enjoyed this film. I thought it was a really great take on the Superman kind of world, on the franchise, kind of continued an existing kind of storyline, and was just really decent, and in my opinion was a lot better than the next iteration, which was the Man of Steel kind of rebooted Superman franchise. And you know, if they had continued with the Superman Returns kind of world, especially what they were creating in terms of future potential storylines, it could have even led to a very different looking DC extended universe. So I'm going to explain why I like Superman Returns in this movie review. So from a storytelling point of view, one of the things that I think Superman Returns does really well is that it gets the tone of the Superman world really well, in terms of it being a lot more hopeful. And obviously it's got very intense and kind of, you know, dramatic moments in there, but it just does the tone really well compared to, you know, Man of Steel, which had a very dark and gritty tone, which was very akin to Batman and kind of works really well with the Batman franchise, but you know, it doesn't work as well with Superman. So just from a tonal point of view, I just think Superman Returns kind of really does hit the mark. So yeah, going back to the storyline in particular, it's really clever what they've done, in the sense that it's a 5-year follow-on from Superman 2. So Superman had left Earth and kind of over 5 years has now returned and has come back to a very different looking metropolis to what he had left before. So you know, the world is kind of trying to carry on without Superman, so kind of villainy and kind of bad crimes has kind of gone up. Lois Lane has met someone new and now has a child with them. So you know, Clark Kent and Superman is kind of returning to this kind of different world than what he left 5 years ago. This kind of concept is something that the new TV series Manifest has kind of adopted, and is kind of looking at what would happen if you return to your old kind of existence 5 years later. So they've definitely taken inspiration from Superman Returns. But anyway, kind of going back to this film, it works really well in terms of that kind of device, and they kind of set tension up really well in this film as well. So you know, Lex Luthor is kind of back and is kind of even more evil than he was before. He's kind of still having a vendetta and hatred towards Superman, and kind of is now using his own technology against Superman to kind of bring him down. And like I said before as well, Lois Lane has now got a new partner, so there's a lot of tension with kind of the Superman Lois Lane kind of dynamic now as well. I know there's been a lot of criticism of this film in terms of it being a lot more around Lois Lane's storyline and being more focused on her narrative than Superman's, which is true, and it is, you know, a lot more of kind of Lois Lane's storyline up in parts, more so than kind of Clark Kent and Superman's. And it's really apparent actually when Superman's kind of creepily kind of looking at Lois Lane, he's just always kind of being somber and very sad when he's kind of looking on to her kind of new world. So yeah, it is true, the criticism is true in that, you know, some bits are a bit more drawn out and it can be a little bit boring in parts, and in some parts, you know, it being a lot more focused on the Lois Lane storyline. But one of the good things I do like about the storyline is that it's not another origin storyline, which incidentally was what Man of Steel ended up being with Henry Cavill's kind of rebooted franchise. But the fact that they were kind of continuing an existing kind of storyline that had a lot of setup from the first and second film, it was kind of able to just dive straight in there and just kind of continue a narrative. And even for people that hadn't viewed the first and second film, I think it can still work well for them, because pretty much everyone knows the basic premise of what Superman's about, and the fact that it kind of started off by explaining that, you know, he's coming back after 5 years' time, it just worked really well from a storyline point of view. So overall, the characters and the actors in this film are great. Brandon Routh plays Superman and Clark Kent absolutely brilliantly. Superman's aspect of his character is really cool. He's very positive, very hopeful, a bit sad in moments, but that's understandable because obviously his whole world has changed since he was last here. Clark Kent is also really, really good, and I feel like Brendan Routh plays the Clark Kent character really, really well, as he's a lot more of the shy, unassuming, witty kind of aspects of the Clark Kent character that kind of make him the character that he is. I would have wanted a bit more of Clark Kent in this film, as I feel like, you know, the live action movies don't really convey this character as well as they should do. Obviously the 90s TV show had a lot more of an opportunity to kind of flesh that character out and did him really, really well. But I just feel like on the big screen I would have wanted to see more of this character. But you know, that said, Brendan Routh kind of does a good job in terms of playing both these characters. We then have Kate Bosworth, who plays Lois Lane, and again she does a really, really good job in terms of kind of holding this character together and kind of having her own spin on it as well. Like I said before, the film is kind of focused on her character a lot in this film, and thankfully she can kind of rise up to the challenge and play the part really, really well. Kevin Spacey is a brilliant Lex Luthor. He's kind of very crazy and kind of hell-bent on this mission of kind of destroying Superman and kind of taking over the world, and is very dramatic and crazy and scary and all of those kind of things. So he does a really, really good job. James Marsden has jumped ship from X-Men and has joined the Superman Returns world, and he plays Richard White, who is the nephew of Perry White, who is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle. So his character is obviously a new character and is the new love interest for Lois Lane, so has a lot of kind of dynamics between Clark Kent and Superman's character. So the cast worked really, really well together in the sense that they have the classic characters over here and then the new characters over here, and together they all kind of work surprisingly well together. Like I said before, it's a shame that this film didn't get a sequel, because the dynamics and the kind of world that they were creating could have been so good. But you know, nonetheless, this film is really, really good from a characters and actors point of view. Considering this movie was released all the way back in 2006, surprisingly, the visuals do kind of hold their own. The action sequences look really cool, all of Superman's powers look really, really good, and all of the over-the-top, end-of-the-world type fiasco looks really, really cool as well. So, you know, from a visuals point of view, considering this film was released over 10 years ago, looks decent. In terms of comparisons, I personally feel like Superman Returns is a lot better than the next rebooted iteration, which was Henry Cavill's Man of Steel, as I just feel like the tone, the characters, the kind of world, the storytelling device, everything is just a lot better in this film than the next version. And I know everyone really loves the Christopher Reeves kind of sweeter films, but in my opinion, I feel like this is kind of better than those as well, because it's a lot more modern, it's a lot more kind of relatable, and just kind of the 5-year jump kind of exploration about what would happen when Superman returns. I just feel like conceptually the film works really, really well as a whole. In terms of comparing it to Marvel films, I feel like Marvel films have a winning formula that's a lot better than Superman Returns, but in terms of all the other Superman, Man of Steel comparisons at least, I feel like this film is a lot better. Overall, I really enjoyed Superman Returns. I feel like it's a lot stronger than any of the other Superman big screen attempts, and you know, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect film by any means. It definitely has its flaws and a lot of improvement opportunities, but I just feel like it could have been a really nice, interesting franchise, and I just wish it could have continued in that regard. Obviously, we will kind of get a bit of a pseudo continuation of the Brendan Routh Superman character, as he's going to be visiting the Infinite Earth storyline in the Arrowverse TV show. But you know, as far as the big screen adaptation of Superman, I feel like this is probably one of the stronger takes, and I just wish it would have kind of had its own sequel to kind of continue the interesting elements and dynamics that they were creating. But you know, overall, I feel like this film is definitely worth a watch, and for those reasons I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.